our lived experience is very real. Our lived experience is expertise and should be treated as such. And so I think when people make that connection, I think it is really powerful.
Press the button to begin.
You're listening to The Social Primate with your host, Eddie Aguirre. And today we have the one and only Lara Cortez, organizer and co-director of EYCEJ Communities for Environmental Justice. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, buenas tardes. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you so much for making the time. We've been planning this for a couple of weeks now. I've definitely been aware of the work the organization has been doing over the last couple of years. You know, to me, it might seem like even like a decade at this point or so, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been around since 2001.
Dang, okay.
So nothing to laugh at for sure. We've seen a lot of things, but I've been on the team for about 7 years.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy to know because people already know this history about me, but for context, I was raised in Southeast LA, basically since 98. It's been my community for forever, you know? Now, one thing for people who are unfamiliar with Southeast LA by this point, this specific region sits on a crossroads of freeways, rail yards, warehouses, and at least from my perspective in the last couple of decades that I've been there, it's always seemed like either city planners, politicians, corporations, they continue to put profit and logistics over people. And it's something that, at least in my upbringing from the get-go, it didn't feel like I had a lot of control over it. It just felt like I was just placed here, and this is my reality, and this is my normal, right? And very much like yourself, I heard off the Think 100% podcast. I didn't really become self-aware of this environment around me until my mid-20s, late 20s. There's been reports now for a couple of years saying how we have higher risk of asthma, cancer, pollution in our soil, like a variety of different things. And when I found out that there was actually people on the ground putting in the work to try to make these issues visible to the community at large, I was like, okay, I need to figure out what drives this organization, what drives EYCEJ. So I want to find out a little bit about that. I want to see what information you can give me and the audience. But to start off, like, how did you get started into all of this?
Yeah, I can definitely share about all of that. I love talking about EYCEJ, so definitely can do that. So I think in the context of how you started, right, talking about you're from Cela, love that. So I use she, pronouns. I am from the occupied Tongva lands of Southeast Los Angeles, known as so-called Bell Gardens. I have lived in Bell Gardens my entire life. I love Southeast LA. You already gave a great description of Southeast LA for folks that like are from out of the area, because that happens sometimes where I have to describe that. I think about it is like between East LA and Long Beach, because folks usually know those two locations. And so like the area in between, that's us. And so for me, I totally stumbled on environmental justice. It was not something I was planning to do as a career or even knowledgeable. I think very much like you said, I grew up for a while in BG next to train tracks, the train tracks that divide Bell Gardens and Southgate. And you could hear the train, right, at 3, 4 in the morning. That was normal for me, right? And I grew up and I went to Bell Gardens Elementary School, which shares a wall with the 710 freeway. The 710 freeway brings in 40 to 60,000 truck trips per day on the freeway. And so that's what, as children, we were playing next to, right? Children are still playing next to that. And I'll get more into that later, right? But growing up in that environment, Bell Gardens Intermediate, right, where I went also is like a quarter mile from the 710 freeway. Bell Gardens High School, the backyard where the field is, also train tracks that divide Commerce and Bell Gardens. So heavily industrial, very much exposed and totally normalized it, right? So I think that's a lot of what we talk about at EYCEJ, is that we are choosing and acknowledging that we're not normalizing these conditions. And so I was very much into not knowing what I was going to do after high school. I wasn't the best student, but when the May Days were happening and popping off, I walked out and then I received support from my family, which I thought was very weird. But they were like, that's cool. You're standing up for immigrant rights. And I was like, yeah, it felt right. But like to know that like you don't consider it ditching, to know that it's socially allowed in my home was very impactful for me. And so I think that's when I was able to name like the race issues that exist. In particular, I've always been very passionate about anti-recidivism, acknowledging the prison industrial complex, understanding that disproportionately we are over-policed, we are over-criminalized, we are put into jails, we are brought back into systems that do not support what they call rehabilitation, right? But instead are criminalized further through probation payments, through felony charges where now you're labeled as a felon and can't get a job and things like that. So that's the pathway that I was going to go down. I was pursuing my master's at Cal State Long Beach to do sociology, and realized that I just needed a job because, like,
Of course,
payments are real. And so at that point, through pure luck, right, I was doing an internship at Khmer Girls in Action. Shout out to that group in Long Beach, doing great work with Cambodian youth. I was working with them on a school-based center campaign that they were working on and reaching out to health-based organizations. From that, I was able to connect with the Long Beach Alliance for Children with Asthma, a program that runs out of Miller Children's and Women's Hospital in Long Beach. And they were like, hey, we're actually hiring an organizer. And so I applied. They said, what do you know about environmental health and justice? And I said, nothing. But I know how to speak Spanish really well, and you need someone that can organize señoras. And that's what I'm good at. I'm good at talking to people. Yeah. And so that was literally my introduction to environmental health. I learned on the job. They took a big chance on me. Very thankful for that. Very thankful for partners that just really overextended themselves, community members that were down to teach me. Elders that were down to teach me. And then from there, because of my work at the Long Beach Alliance for Children with Asthma, I met organizers from East Yard communities for environmental justice. We were working on the same campaigns, in particular, one around the widening of the 710 freeway, and the other one, which was on a proposed new rail yard, which was going to be in LA, but borderline West Long Beach, called the Southern California International Gateway, SCIG. And so we're working on those projects together. And that's when I was like, oh, East Yard is really cool. I'm going to become a member. Yeah. And then I realized that they organize in my hood. They have like someone on campus at Bell Gardens High School. The main office is based out of Commerce. And I was like, this is my hood. Got to meet the people. I was like, these are my people. And so through those relationships, ended up coming back to work in my hood, because that's really what I've always wanted to do, is stay local.
Now, you're coming face to face with the fact that these issues are playing out in your hood. Like, what was that moment like for you when you started figuring out what issues were actually affecting you this whole time while you were living here?
Yeah, I think one is you feel silly a lot of times. It's just like, how did I not notice this? How did I normalize this? But I think for me, what was the most powerful moment was when I connected the fact that pollution isn't something for me to worry about later. It's connected to environmental racism. Right? I think the moment when I realized my initial passion around social justice was focused on racial issues, and this is another form of racism that plays out through where things are located in our community and disproportionately placed to intentionally harm communities of color. When I realized that, I've always been an angry person, right? With healthy outlets to release for the most part. And so I think for me, I was just like, oh, now I'm big mad. So now I really got to do things on this, because I want to agitate other folks to be just as mad as I am. I was like, how don't all of us know about this?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because when I was growing up there, to be quite frank, and I've mentioned this before too, I didn't like being from Southeast LA, because it just felt like you were just placed into this environment where you didn't see any improvements. And I think the biggest thing for me and a lot of people was just like, we just wanted to get out of there, right? And I think we all have had that conversation in our heads. But at some point or another, you got to start realizing that this is only going to get as good as the efforts that you put in, right? And that goes with everything. So if you want to see your community improve, like, you have to be one of those people who rallies up other individuals and shows them exactly what it is that they're missing. So unless we're really willing to look at these issues face to face and understand that we are where we're at because of these systems at play, it helps us better understand that sense of the control that we can have as long as we organize.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate that you brought that up, the idea of like the conversation of leaving Sela, right? Or not feeling love for Sela. I think that's a really important topic because I feel like even in a lot of cultures in our like Latinidad, quote unquote, right? Just to generalize like all the people of color in the general area that we live in, we are taught also, it is taught to us of like, if you're doing better for yourself, that means you're leaving, right? And I know I was taught that growing up. I don't even know who taught me that. Like, as you were saying, I was like, who taught me that? I don't know. But I was definitely raised to think that Southeast LA was not it. That was not progress. Our parents came to this country. We migrated here because we needed somewhere to be where our community connections were. But if we're trying to do better, then we need to move to a community with affluence, right? The Beverly Hills of whatever. And even the reputation of Southeast LA also, right? Like, Southeast LA has only been Southeast LA probably for about the last 10 years, right? Before that, it was like every city on their own. And through many efforts, right? Community-based efforts, organizational efforts, electeds and their efforts, we have now realized that we are stronger together, right? I mean, there's issues still, but, you know, in general, Southeast LA as a region feels just so beautiful now in terms of like, it's always been this beautiful. It's always been the same community. But I think to learn to appreciate, like, I love having the eloteros, right? I love knowing my neighbors. I love knowing the elders around the hood, right? I love being close to Ford Park, which is close to where I live. I love being next to the Bionico spot, right? And I get an agua fresca, right? And so I think those are the things that we know if we move into the affluent, these quote unquote communities, that's not going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, that's our culture, so that don't make sense.
Yeah, no, and a lot of the times you don't really put the thought into how important it is to the fabric of your cultura, you know? Because you live it every day. You don't have a way of measuring how valuable this is to you, right? And one of the things, you know, I want to mention is that when we start shifting towards self-awareness, we start asking who is responsible for what is going on, right? And then, again, we start figuring out that these systems can be changed. And suddenly our individual assessment of our reality, right, our environment, we start realizing that each and every one of us feel the same way, but we haven't had those moments validated. So if we don't have that validation, we're kind of isolated in our own world, and we think that that's the reality and that's going to continue being it. But then if I meet you and then I meet a couple of other people and we feel the same way, we start seeing like, wait, this energy that we feel, this anger, we can collectively use it for action.
Yes. Yes. You pin that because that's how ECR started. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. And it's funny, this week we're running our Fighting for Life Academy, which is a very special time for our organization. We do it every year, and every year we switch up our curriculum. So last night was day one. And we talked about the history of East Yard. So it's fresh off the dome. And so when you said that, I was just like, yeah, that's exactly how I started. It started off of community members on the border of Commerce and East LA, because these two areas are divided by the rail yards, recognizing that these rail yards were causing a lot of harm. They were causing chronic health conditions, respiratory, cardiovascular, etc. And community started making those connections. And they went to their city council and they were like, hey, there's something wrong with these rail yards. You need to get them out. City council's like, you don't like it? Then move, right? City council leaves, community members stay, and they start talking to each other because they have exactly that in common. Those health impacts, that community, that culture, that love to be there. And so they start organizing. And so the ECR story continues that after not being able to do anything with the city, right? Also, as a fun fact, even though the rail yards may be in Commerce and East LA, they cannot regulate them, right? So even if Commerce, so we're learning as we're going, right? How many of us know how to navigate the intricacies of like agencies and electeds and politicians and all that? It's very complicated, very intentionally complicated to maneuver, right? But East Yard has been able to do a great job of identifying, right? Okay, city council cannot fix this. So who's in charge of the air pollution that's causing it? The Air Quality Management District regionally, right? So we go to the Air Quality Management District. They say, oh, actually, this is a state issue. So go to the California Air Resources Board, CARB. So we go to Sacramento to talk to CARB. CARB tells us, well, actually, the trains are interstate. So you need to talk to the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. EPA says, well, the rail yard is in Commerce, so you need to talk to AQMD. And so it's the Spider-Man meme of all these agency folks pointing at each other, right? And we're just like, so at some point, right, it takes power building, it takes mobilization, right? Not one person is doing that, right? I'm interviewing with you today. I stand on so many like folks' shoulders alongside so many amazing community members that are pushing every day things that feel really defeatist, especially right now where we're at politically. But to get those folks in the room, to get those agencies in the room to listen, to finally get someone good in those agencies that are down to make a change or even consider changes, and to be able to press with other partners to do this really has been able to push the needle forward in LA around environmental justice.
Now, what does that organizing look like?
I mean, from the jump, it's door knocking, right? If you're going to organize in a hood, you need to build a relationship. You need to be genuine about the relationship. I think trust building is so critical, right? All we have at the end of the day is our palabra when money's gone, when everything else is gone. And so you need to be very honest and true to community, especially as an organization, right? But even as an individual, right? That's my, especially like I organize in the Southeast. I live in the Southeast. This is my community, like beyond my role as East Yard, which is important to make sure that I am trustworthy in that capacity. As an individual, I need to be really trustworthy. And if I can't do something, I need to say I'm not going to be able to do something, right? So door knocking is really important. Maintaining those relationships are really important. And I think something that I've learned at East Yard that I think we do really well is we're very principled, right? Like we're not here to sell out our community. So much in my years of being at East Yard, I've learned there's so much legislation, bills, laws, etc., that get proposed and passed where the most minimal thing to improve our community is done. And in that same bill, there's harm to our community. Right. Yeah. And that there's other organizations supporting those bills. Right. Because it's it works on a basis of like, all right, politician A is trying to pass this because that's their lane. Right. They're trying to look good around environmental justice. And so it passed these things that seem okay, but then are also very problematic. And I think that's something that we're really good at East Yard. We're like, we could be cool on a bill today, and we're going to be in opposition with you tomorrow if this is a whack bill. We don't care. Like, this is what it is, and we're not here to sell out our comunidades. And so I think, like, that type of, again, trust is really critical for what we do. Yeah. So that's, I think, how we do organizing. And I could get into the structures of, like, where we organize and how our membership groups run and all that. But I think at the core, it's those principles for sure.
And how do you build that confidence in people so they know that they can show up to these things?
Yeah, I think hyping people up, I think, and leading by example, so many reasons. I think, do I enjoy doing public comment? No. Do I still get nervous after 10 years of doing it? Yes. But I do it because it's necessary, right? And so it's really important for me to do it. And it's really important for other people to do it, right? Like in particular in any of the communities that we work in, I'm like, I could go to public comment in Long Beach. That's not going to be as strong as one of our West Long Beach community residents talking about that issue because they live there. Yeah. I could talk about that all day as being part of East Yard. It does not have the same impact, right? And so I think one of the really important roles around people being confident is people understanding that they have expertise in their community. Right? The idea that you live in your hood and you know what you need in your hood is very much unvalidated because people are like, if you don't have a study that shows blah, 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 and it's just like, our lived experience is very real. Our lived experience is expertise and should be treated as such. And so I think when people make that connection, I think it is really powerful.
Damn, honestly, that's really fascinating that you said that because that is true. Like, we know what we need because we are there on the ground, right? Like, these stats can say whatever they want, and yeah, to an extent, it does paint a picture, but it doesn't paint the whole picture of those in there, right? And I think that's what I've always been trying to figure that out through conversation. Like, what does it take for somebody to make that step to be active in their community, right? And I try to think back on my position and how I got to the point where I wanted to have these conversations, right? Because at the end of the day, I like to say that I do these conversations with intention. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, you have that intention to want to do better for X, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's a lot of everything that you said. I think like being angry, I think that's something that is really important, right? If you're not angry, in my opinion, then you're not really understanding the issue. Because if you understand the issue in any of the hoods that we work in, you're going to be mad because you do care. And I know that you care. You just haven't made that connection yet, right? So being angry, right? Understanding your role, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm good at talking. It's what got me in trouble in high school, and it got me a job now. But that is my strength. And so like that is my lane. There are people that are great chefs. There are people that are great historians, right? And so is it to document history, right? The way that you're doing with the podcast. Yeah. Is it to make food for community? Is it to care for children, right? Is it to have your own children? Like, what is that lane that you are best serving for the movement, right? And I think when people realize that whatever lane they're in, that they can still support, that it doesn't have to look like, I mean, everybody should go to a protest. Everybody should try it. But, like, it may not be your lane to be at every protest. It may not be your lane to be a chant leader. I think that's sometimes what people think when they think, oh, you're, like, in some type of social justice work. And they automatically see, like, someone with the, like, thing with the mic, right, trying to do a chant. And that's cool. We need that. But there's also other lanes to fill,
Now, earlier you mentioned about, like, the obstacles you have to go through with different agencies at different levels of state, federal. That, to me, only makes the wins that the organization has had over the last couple of years have even more weight to them, because it means that you guys went deep in there to try to make sure that this gets noticed at a level where these, projects stop for the most part. Can you tell me a little bit about those wins, per se?
Yeah, definitely. I have a few fresh off because I was talking about that last night at the Academy also. One of the big wins that I think we're very known for also, we work with a coalition called the Coalition for Environmental Health and Justice. With that coalition, we worked on stopping the proposed widening of the 710 freeway. The 710 freeway, for folks that don't know, right, or if youth are listening and aren't driving yet, that's real. People don't know sometimes the freeways. The 710 freeway focuses on from East LA down to Long Beach through the Southeast cities is how I best describe it. It's about 16 miles long, so it's not a long freeway, but it is a connector from the ports of LA and Long Beach, closest to Long Beach, but a connector for both ports that goes into the rail yards in Commerce, East LA, the warehouses in Compton area as well. There's a lot of warehousing in Commerce as well. And then into the 60 and the 10 freeway, which goes into the IE where there's mega warehousing happening. So that freeway in 2001 was proposed to be widened to 16 lanes total. Yeah, huge. And if you're from the hood, then you know the density in our hoods, right? There's homes up along the freeway. There is the LA River is right next to the freeway. There's parks right next to the freeway. We're all just so like condensed in such a small area with high density population. A lot of the folks that live in those high density areas are also low income folks, right? People of color. And so we found out, it was not told to us by Caltrans or Metro, who were the leading agencies. Caltrans is the agency that focused on the actual widening of the freeway. Metro was involved because they were handling a lot of the funding, but also there was projects that ran alongside of it, such as widening some of the arterial streets. Arterial streets are major streets from the freeway, so like Imperial Highway, if you know the area, Firestone, Florence, Willow, PCH, those types of streets. And those widenings would also cause displacement. And so a lot was done, right? In 2001, I can't begin to tell you the 20 plus years of organizing and all of the many campaigns that we did to do that. But there's a lot out there. We've done puppets, we've done face paintings. We've packed rooms from downtown LA at their metro offices at Union Station to where they would have their meetings in Paramount, where we couldn't even fit in the spaces, right?
Crazy.
We couldn't drive to the spaces because we had so many youth that were coming through that couldn't drive, that we all just had to bike there. And so those are the types of actions that our communities took, right? Making posters, doing public comments, doing poetry as comments, right? So many beautiful actions, so much door knocking. That was one of the first things I did at East Yard, actually, was I started door knocking in East LA because there were homes on the displacement list and folks aren't being told that they're on the displacement list. And so through that process, there was also like potential harms to the LA River, construction issues, all kinds of issues with the project. And so we fought for those 20 plus years. Folks before me, I inherited this project again 10 years ago when I was working at the other org I was at, and then into East Yard. And in 2021, finally, after many years, we were able to get the EPA, I mentioned them earlier, the Environmental Protection Agency, because they had been listening, they had been meeting with us, at least the region that serves us, which is Region 9, had been in those meetings and were listening to all of the concerns that we brought up. And so they sent a letter to Caltrans and Metro stating, like, what you're planning to approve that the community already said no to, it's legally questionable. Like, what you're doing is legally questionable right now. And so we jumped on that because we knew that. We had been knowing that for a long time. Yeah. We also talked to Metro, met with folks, and from that we were able to stop the widening of the 710 freeway. Huge win. This is happening also through the pandemic starting, all the things. So we celebrated during that time, which was interesting. But I'll show we've never been no projects. Because what we have now on the 710 is not good, right? There's so much traffic. There's so many issues that we still want to see improvement. So right now we're in Metro is leading a second iteration of the process, and we're starting the second phase of that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm interested, 2026 should be popping with more info on that and how to engage in that type of work. Another big win that we had was on Exide, a battery-led smelter in the city of Vernon, very close to Commerce, very close to Boyle Heights and East LA. That battery recycler emitted over 10,000 pounds of lead into the communities. It also emitted arsenic. It was for decades being cited and then not even paying their citations. From that, we finally were able to pressure AQMD to fine them, obviously, and then obviously because they weren't paying their fines, to temporarily cut their work. So they were able to cut their production in half and do some testing. Through the testing of the soil is when because lead is heavy, it's a metal, right? So it goes into the soil. There was just so much lead. There is no safe level of lead. 80 parts per million is the state threshold that's allowed. And we're looking at numbers that are 10,000 plus of parts per million of lead. We are living in toxic waste, straight up. And so the more they kept testing, the more they kept finding stuff. And so in 2015, I believe, we were able to fully shut down Exide through all of that work, which was huge. Still a lot of issues. One is the cleanup radius right now is only 1.7 miles out. We want that expanded. Studies show, especially from public health, that the contamination could have gone out up to 4.5 miles. There is still a level of cleanup that's happening. East Yard has done we've done many things since the closure to make sure that the cleanup is done right. We have found homes that are still contaminated post-cleanup, quote unquote. And so that's a huge issue. We have found issues with the contractors not doing what they have to do well. We had a big win a couple years ago to change the contractor practices by the Department of Toxic Substance Control, which is the agency that's leading the cleanup. And so we got them to change their contract so that some of the contractors that were doing not good things would no longer be contracted for the cleanup. We were able to pass a local hire program, which means that they have to strive for 50% local hire because these jobs are really good jobs. And if they wear the appropriate PPE, the personal protective equipment, then it should not be dangerous for folks. And so the idea that our community members be working these really good union jobs is really important because they're invested in cleaning up their hoods, and also because they let us know when shit's going sideways. They let us know when the cleanup is not going well. And so because of that, we've been able to also have a lot of wins. Unfortunately, I can't remember what year, but it was during the pandemic for sure. The Department of Justice, Exide was basically on trial, and the Department of Justice allowed for them to declare bankruptcy. And so that makes the bill for the cleanup go to taxpayers, right? Go to community folks. We've been able to have some success. We got money from Governor Brown. We've got money from Newsom. We were able to pass a bill around battery-led recycling. All of that money from those three pockets goes back into a state fund for lead cleanup across the state.
Yeah.
And Exide is the biggest effort for that. I'll pause there.
There was research apparently that they found lead contamination in baby teeth of children living in 5 of those communities. And apparently it says that this usually happens in the second trimester of pregnancy. So obviously it's the mom that already has lead, coursing through her body, and that at this point it's being passed on to the baby at this point. And that's absurd. That is crazy, because anybody else hearing this in an affluent community will immediately be like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here,
Yeah.
But we're just supposed to normalize it and be okay with it. Yeah. I don't know if people have noticed, but on the 710 freeway, there's been, in Bell Gardens too, there's been these billboards that say, you live in a contamination area, like you're a higher risk for cancer and asthma. And we see this in our commutes throughout the day, kind of like background noise, like, okay, cool. But it's like, no, like you can't just accept that.
Yeah. That study that you referenced is a study that East Yard did with USC Environmental Health Centers. Shout out to Joe Johnston, the professor that has really supported like our understanding, right? Because we have a lot of folks, side tangent, and I'll come back, but there's a lot of academic institutions that will come into our hoods and study us and release their reports and then dip and never talk to us again. Wow. Like that happens very often. Yeah. And so I think just giving that shout out to Dr. Joe Johnston, because she's one of those folks that are really principled in their academic careers, to be like, what do y'all need, right? We need studies that show how deep this impact is on our health. And that Truth Fairy study was so critical to understanding that in vitro, second, third trimester in birth, right? Even if you're not putting them in the soil, if you're keeping these children away from playing on the ground, which children need to play. Like we need clean soil for children to play on also. But even if you keep them away from all that they're still exposed, right? And I've definitely talked to people when this study was happening, also on the guilt, right? That people have like, damn, I didn't know I was doing this for my child, or things like that. And it's just like, the idea of like, it's not our fault that these polluters are doing this, right? I think of what you said around the freeways and how it's put in our face sometimes around the exposure. And I think that's true. I think I go back and forth. I try to give a lot of grace around like, we have a lot of pressing issues in our communities. A lot of times having housing is an issue, right? East Yard also does housing work, particularly around rent control and rent stabilization, because so many of our communities are renter populations and they're literally struggling to keep a roof over their head, especially right now. And so, thinking about what's going to kill you later is not as important as you not having housing right now. Yeah. And sometimes folks are forced to choose, right? And that's unfortunate. However, I'm just like, it is an urgent item right now, right? Especially for folks in this generation, for the next 7 generations, right? That like, we need to have the battles now so that our babies, our nieces, our nephews, our siblings are not having to fight this battle later. And so I think I isolate between those two things, like giving grace, but also like, no, this is critical. Come join the movement right now. We need you right now for the future of what. And just protecting, right, our air, water, and soil that give us so much. They literally give us life. So it is our responsibility to caretake for them.
Yeah. It's like you mentioned, it's for the next couple generations so they don't have to go through this, or at least you mitigate what they're going to have to go through as, time passes. And I think that's a key, again, with that self-awareness where you start thinking about others rather than yourself. I think that's just part of maturity too. You start seeing how you can be of service. But no, it's fascinating work what you guys have done. And honestly, I think it's awesome that you guys continue to grow, and it's been going on for this long at this time, 24 years.
Yeah. 24 years. It's a long to shout out to like our co-founder, still around, still a member. We're very lucky that we have a lot of that oral history still with us, right? Still in our hoods. And it is a huge responsibility. I will say, like, once you know, you can't unknow. I think that's the fear about a lot of people, is that like they don't want to know. But once folks start to learn, there is a like, oh, I can't look away now. What do I need to do here? Because it's when you know, then if you realize that if you're not part of the solution, then you're actively part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially now when you really reflect on what's going on as well, right? I mean, we're already having to deal with these injustices in our communities, and at the same time, we're still getting attacked, violently through these raids going on now. So it's like, it's this consistent trauma just back to back, and it's something that we go back to the normalizing thing. Like, you can't normalize any of these actions taking place in the communities.
Yeah, I can share a little bit on that, because I think like there's definitely, particularly in this last year or since January, obviously, we have seen if you follow environmental justice, and if you don't, that's cool. That's what you're here to learn, right? There have been so many cuts to so much. There have been so many reversals of policies that have reversed what we have been able to make progress on that took us like 10 years to get, and now we're just seeing it cut left and right. Things are getting cut, right? Because there's no legal process in the U.S. anymore. That's a lie. We all see that. And so it has been very hard. It's really hard. And there are sad days of like, damn, when are we going to catch a break?
Yeah,
when are we going to catch a win? Like, when can we just breathe and hold the line, So I feel that too, which is, I definitely feel like right now, you were sharing, like, that is that moment of like, fuck, like the raids, like, because, we're not isolated, right? Environmental justice is immigrant rights justice, is gender justice, is all of these things. And we're being attacked on all fronts, right? Like, we're out there, folks from East Yard and the team, we're out there doing work time, like, going to check on ICE raids and going to check and monitor things, because like we can't operate in an isolated space, right? That's just what it is. We're very lucky that we can do that too, where we're not like confined to like doing certain things or whatever. But I think what I wanted to share was when I started my position as a co-AD, I started as an organizer at East Yard, which I'm still organizing. And when I started my position as a co-AD of the org, I was like, the one thing I want to make sure I do is I'm going to keep organizing, even though I'm still co-directing. And that's really hard. I've been doing that for like 3 or 4 years now. But I don't regret that decision. It has been the best decision I've made, because I still get to organize, which means I still get to talk to people, to community members that think just like I do, where I can teach them and they're constantly teaching me, where we get to like grieve in community. We get to love in community. We get to laugh in community. Just this weekend on Saturday, we hosted a little cafecito and chill. So we met up at Crucita, shout out to Crucitas and HP, to grab cafecitos, and then kicked it at Salt Lake Park, And yeah, and a few folks brought games, and a lot of us are just chatting it up, and it's just like this space, creating a safe space for us to just be for an hour, for 2 hours, to talk, to laugh, to play Uno, whatever. Like, that is what allows us to keep to. I'm like, I don't want to use the fuel because fuck gas, But that gives us the energy to really keep pushing when those moments of hardship really are in our hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good because it kind of, to me right now, it brought up the point where we talked about confidence and also about knowing the role that you can play in your community. It's like you have to have these moments so you can bond with others, right? Like you just have to. Like there's days where I wouldn't even know the people around me. Like you're just walking around, like kind of ignoring them, like just doing your thing. But I've been more open to the opportunities of putting myself in these positions where I'm around community. Even if I'm not like actively talking to somebody, I'm still showing up. And we're all showing up, right? And that's all you need to do. It gives you that confidence to see that we can start controlling that narrative rather than having these outsiders just say it for us. Because we're a lot more than what we see on the news.
Yeah. And that is decolonization, right? Because literally what we are taught in the U.S. to be Americanized is to be an individualist, right? Worry about making your money and do you, and that's it. Don't worry about nobody else. As a matter of fact, you're scolded if you think about somebody else, if you care about somebody else, right? And it's like, that is not the indigenous principles that we have been taught as people from the diaspora and as folks that are indigenous to here, right? And so the idea of, okay, I'm going to be intentional to not isolate myself, right? But to say buenas tardes to the neighbor, right? How many of us don't say buenos dias anymore to people, right? So the idea of saying what's up to a stranger, the idea of like telling someone they did a great job, it's not always about competition. It's about uplifting each other. And so I think like that the process of doing that really is decolonizing ourselves. And that's like a small step, but it's a really important step to creating the culture,
Yeah, no, exactly. And when it comes down to my neighbors, I'm the type of person who's not really an extrovert, but the way I kind of started hijacking that part of myself was I recognize at least this pattern for myself. Like when somebody comes into a room and they're like, hey, good morning, good afternoon. Most of us respond because we're responding to somebody telling us. We're not always going to be the first ones to say it, but we know that if somebody says it, it's kind of like, oh, well, now let me say it now, right? So I started telling myself, okay, like they're not going to tell me good morning. They're not going to say good afternoon. It has to come from me. Like I have to put that first foot forward so then they open up and they're like, oh, cool, let me be vulnerable as well. It's just, it has to start with me if I want it to extend, outside of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it literally takes everybody feeling that, because what we're fighting is systems. And they're not trying to give up their power, right? Literally, the word equity has been tossed around in the last decade or whatever, right? And equity really means redistributing power so that the folks that have less power get more power and the folks that have more power get less power. And the folks with power are going to do that. So it literally takes the communication, the relationships of all of us together to be able to fight for that power, to have equal power, and that we can also distribute that in a very humble and adequate way,
Yeah. Now, for those listeners that are just waking up to this, that are just coming to this realization, similar to when you came to this conclusion, what would you tell somebody? What's their next step after they're self-aware of this?
Yeah, I would definitely say, first of all, that it's not too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. We have elders in the movement. We've got like preteens in the movement. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are right on time. We need you still. We need you now. We need you now more than ever. So I think that's really important to know. If you're in the East Yard communities, like, hit us up. We're active on the socials. That's probably the best way to reach us. Again, we work in the communities of Boyle Heights and East LA, all the Southeast cities. I'm not going to name them because that'll take another 10 minutes. And then we'll get to the next question. And then Long Beach, right? The particularly in West Long Beach, but West Long Beach, North Long Beach, Downtown Long Beach, all very impacted communities. So if you're in any of those hoods, hit us up. Again, socials is the best, but you could also look on our website, which we do have, EYCEJ.org. If you're not in our communities, because, we can only cover so much geographic area, definitely engage with your local community, right? If you have a question, like, we got great partners out in the IE. We got People's Collective for Environmental Justice out in the IE if you're out there. I know that there's folks out in Inglewood. I know there's folks in like downtown city of LA area as well. If you're like, I'm interested in like social justice, but maybe not environmental justice, look it up. Google it. Spiral and go into the deep rabbit hole from one org to the other org, and you will find what you are looking for, you know?
Nice. Now, on that same topic, like for people who are outside of Southeast LA, like what can we tell them that kind of helps connect all of our struggles together?
Yeah. Solidarity is so important. You know, I'll name very quickly, like East Yard realized when we were doing, remember I told you the story about like we went to the city, then we went to the air quality management, then we went to the state. Through that process, what I forgot to mention was we built connections along the way, right? And so we ended up creating a regional collaborative, first called the Modesta Avila Coalition, now called the Impact Project, thus standing for Trade, Health, and Environmental Impact Project. That's our regional. So we do, again, like that IE area and all of that general, like more LA area. And then we realized, damn, there's folks on the East Coast, in the Midwest doing this work. So then we helped co-found our national network, which is the Moving Forward Network, which is also on socials. And so there are Congress petitions. You can do public hearings at congressional things, at federal things. So you can still get involved, even if you're not in the LA area. Through regional coalitions, national coalitions, all the things.
Yeah, you see, and that's the amazing part, because at the end of the day, as long as we get out of our heads, we realize that we have people all across the country, right? And, you know, as long as we remember that and we keep showcasing, having these type of conversations, we're going to be able to get out of this and build some sort of roadmap for the future, you know?
Yeah, I'll share, and I wish I had another hour to get into this. I don't. But in the Moving Forward Network, which is our national coalition, when I share space with our partners from other areas of the country, I always come back so energized. There is nothing like the energy of understanding that what they're doing over there impacts us over here, and the wins that we get over here can impact their wins over there. Yeah. There's nothing more motivating to me, or like I'm helping my local community and I'm helping the national landscape. I mean, I'm just one person, you know, like I'm not making a change, but as a community, when all of us are doing it, like we are making that change. That is so, so powerful and beautiful. And we are doing that. Like I have seen it happen. So I think like if you think that sounds like a fairy tale, it is not. I have literally witnessed it. It can happen, you know?
Laura, thank you so much for this, honestly, this humbling conversation, because it's going to take all of us to get through this, right? And again, we're just two people having this conversation. But I know for a fact, me listening to your experiences, I felt the way you felt. And I know that applies to other people around us. So it's just a matter of us having these conversations, hearing us out, and just seeing that we all relate to more than what we think. You know? To end it, where can people find out more about you and the organization?
Yeah. I mentioned our website already, so you can look that up, hit the rewind and listen to that. We're also on the socials, the IG, the Facebook. If you're in Cela, definitely reach out to us. I think our next meeting is September 9th. We do have monthly meetings. You don't need to know anything. You literally don't need to know. You need to come with hambre. And that's it, because we're going to feed you, and we're gonna chop it up. We're going to talk about stuff. We're going to kick it with dope people. So, and most of our memberships, because we're reaching, like every area has a membership space where we have meetings, reach out to us and you could come to one of the meetings, and that's where you'll know, like, meet other people who are in East Yard. Are you vibing with the space? What do you like? What are you interested in? And then ask questions, you know? I think that's really important.
Hey, well, again, thank you, Lara, for everything. And for me, to you and all the members of East Yard, like, thank you so much for everything you're doing for Southeast LA and beyond that. I'm sure we're going to get the support of many other listeners here tonight.
Yes, welcome to the space. Welcome to environmental justice work. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this platform also to just share a little bit about what all our dope communities working on. Yeah.
Of course. With that, you're listening to The Social Primate on KQBHLP. We'll be signing off, and we will see you guys next week. Peace out.
The only way a phoenix rise, yeah. The only way a phoenix rise, yeah. The only way a phoenix rises from its own embers. I don't hope we all make it, but I hope we're all remembered. Some of us don't need to be here. Some of us are only, yeah. I'm marching the crowd of thousands, walking north up Figueroa, her peaceful force. We block the freeway, the intersections. They line the streets on both sides, riot gear and gripping weapons. I made an effort to stare them each in the eye. These humans in disguise. I wonder if they cry, I wonder if they feel. I believe they do. I saw one looking scared, afraid of me and you. Like this little piece of cardboard could bust that bulletproof. I saw another slapping his baton in the open palm, looking eager, waiting for a reason to let loose. Hands up, don't shoot. I hear it echo in the background. There was a third looking boy, dead eyes glazed over, like when you're going back down. What a mood, you wouldn't bat an eye. Had to shoot in order revolution so removed. I wonder if my broken skull spilled blood on his boots. Would he move or just step over? I shift my views. Another man held a shotgun with rubber bullets. Maybe they're real bullets. Looking proud, feeling real purpose. He fighting for what he believes. He been cleaning the streets, he be killing the youth. He live in Huntington Beach. You feel bad for those white kids brainwashed marching with us. Like why they marching with us? They shouldn't march with us. He doesn't hope for violence. He is the violence and he's starting with us. Yeah. The only way a phoenix rises from its own embers. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. The only way a phoenix rises from its own embers. Hey, check. The only way a phoenix rises from its own embers. I don't hope we all make it, but I hope we'll all remember. Some of us don't need to be here. Some of us are only holding us back. Yeah. The only way a phoenix rises from its own embers. I don't hope we all make it, but I hope we'll all remember. Some of us don't need to be here. Some of us are only holding us back.